The hatred and jealousy of WNBA players towards Caitlin Clark has been clear due to the amount of cheap shots and flagrant fouls she's received so far in her rookie season. The WNBA has had 30 flagrant fouls this season. Doesn't seem like that much, but the issue is that 5 of these 30 flagrant fouls have been committed against Caitlin Clark. And of the 5 flagrant fouls that have been committed against Clark, 4 of them have been committed by the Chicago Sky. So yeah, 17% of all flagrant fouls in the entire WNBA this season have been committed against one player, and 80% of those flagrant fouls on that player have been committed by one team alone. But how bad are all of these flagrant fouls or cheap shots really? Were all of them warranted to be a flagrant foul? What about some of the petty cheap shots that she's received that weren't called as technical fouls? Well, today we're going to look into every flagrant foul and cheap shot that has been committed against Caitlin Clark this year and show how they get increasingly more ridiculous. The first instance happened in a game earlier in this season against the LA Sparks. Caitlin drives down the court and pulls up for a deep 3 in transition. The defender goes to contest the shot, but her feet land in Caitlin's landing zone, leading to a flagrant foul call. The controversial part about this play was that the defender landed in the landing zone, which the shooter gets once they land back onto the ground from their jump shot. Interfering in the landing zone has been a controversial call made in the NBA after Zaza Pachulia landed in Kawhi Leonard's landing zone in the 2017 playoffs. Not giving the shooter space to land can lead to the shooter landing on the defender's leg, which can lead to a serious injury.
Clark from way outside draws the foul.
This exact scenario happened to Kawhi and he missed the rest of the playoffs. It's a serious thing, but I wouldn't say this was egregious or intentional, which is why it's first on our list. It's a foul call that now gets upgraded to a flagrant due to the injury history that comes from this scenario. This next instance is merely identical to the one above, and it happened in a game earlier in the season against the Chicago Sky. This play was just like the previous one. The defender landed in the landing zone, which the shooter gets once they land back onto the ground from their jump shot.
Some more coming. Clark with the step back and gets fouled. 3 free throws coming as ENTIRE.
I'd say this one was worse because the defender was not as cautious about the landing zone and didn't even seem to think about it or the potential injury it could have caused. So yes, we start this list with 2 flagrant fouls, but I wouldn't say these actions were cheap shots or actions committed solely out of jealousy for Clark. These were basketball plays that were not done to intentionally hurt Clark, which is why they're lower on our list. But the next instances on this list are highly questionable and get seemingly more and more ridiculous. This next instance on the list is not too bad, but it was completely unnecessary and unwarranted, especially coming from a seasoned WNBA vet. Skylar Diggins-Smith approached Clark as they were on their way to their respective benches going into a timeout. It almost looks like she was speeding up to walk to the bench just to shoulder bump Clark on the back. This cheap shot didn't result in a flagrant foul, but it was clearly done on purpose to trigger Clark and to send a message. It wasn't dangerous by any means, but it was definitely stupid and petty more than anything. Since this was done intentionally, it's worse than the other instances, but it didn't put her in danger. So get ready, because there are even more ridiculous moments on the list. This instance was still a basketball play, but was very egregious. Thomas set a solid screen that nailed Clark to the floor. Thomas nailed Clark in the head and could have been seriously injured on this play. Clark was simply trying to get through a screen set by Alyssa Thomas, but Thomas put her right shoulder and forearm to Clark's neck and face and knocked Caitlin Clark straight to the ground.
5 quick points here for Caitlin Clark. And Thomas just runs over Clark, and not going to get the benefit of the whistle that time.
Watching basketball for years, your hands stay in place when setting a screen, and they should never land on another person's neck or face. This next instance happened in a game earlier in the season against the Chicago Sky. Caitlin was driving to the basket, and while she went to attempt a layup, Angel Reese whacked her again, leading to Clark falling hard to the floor. Was it a basketball play? Yes. But the way that she smacked her that hard right into the face made it seem like the play didn't look too accidental.
Third in the voting last season. Clark hammered. 3 Sky players coming over.
This play resulted in a flagrant foul on Reese and stirred up a lot of controversy due to the ongoing rivalry between her and Clark. Although this was a basketball play, the sheer force and takedown was a very aggressive and unwarranted move by Reese. This play was arguably the most controversial play of the year because it featured a Reese foul on Clark. This foul is pretty bad, but since it was a basketball play, it's not the most ridiculous play on the list. This instance definitely is up there for the most egregious and targeted cheap shot that Clark has faced all season. In a nationally televised game on Friday, August 30th, the Fever matched up against the Sky. The game had all the hype around Caitlin Clark versus Angel Reese and the controversy that has stemmed on which player would win Rookie of the Year. At this point, the Fever were up by 25 late in the fourth quarter, and Caitlin was having an incredible game. Clark received the ball at midcourt and was on her way to get an easy layup. Then Diamond DeShields ran at Clark and intentionally sent her flying to the floor with a very intentional shove. It looks like DeShields runs and doesn't even attempt to slow down and just sends her flying to the floor is insane to me.
Here's Clark. For 29 points, gets tripped up.
This play was intentional and a targeted cheap shot out of frustration from DeShields and the Sky getting their asses kicked by Clark and the Fever. This play was the most recent flagrant foul called on Clark this season, and it was not one that seemed like an accident. The most insane part is that fans and the media are promoting DeShields' behavior. Cheryl Swoops, who has been the biggest hater of Caitlin Clark, defended DeShields with a tweet defending DeShields after the flagrant foul. Now we have WNBA legends condoning flagrant fouls. It's really unbelievable. No one has been more critical of Clark than Cheryl Swoops. She's been caught blatantly lying about Clark's records, age, and accomplishments, and it's stirring up so many issues in the WNBA community that she has now been taken off of the Fever's next game that she was supposed to be an analyst for. This final instance is the most ridiculous of them because it was a blatant cheap shot that wasn't even a basketball play, just a shove to the ground for absolutely no reason. Here we have Kennedy Carter shoving Clark to the ground solely out of frustration and jealousy. You can see Clark was just waiting the inbounds pass, but Carter runs up to her and knocks her right to the ground for absolutely no reason. I also won't forget to mention this because I don't think many people saw this response to the play. Take a look at Angel Reese on the sideline as soon as Carter knocks Clark to the floor. Angel is clapping, cheering, and celebrating in response to Carter knocking Clark right to the floor. I mean, that might be the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen. I mean, how much more blatantly obvious can it get from this? Clark hasn't even received the ball yet, and Carter ran up to her just to knock her to the ground. If this move wasn't intentional, I don't know what is. This was just another example of blatant targeting towards Clark, and it's happened way too many times this season for it not to be a motive behind it. Now that a pattern has developed of blatant flagrant fouls and cheap shots on Clark, it's clear that there is a motive behind these cheap shots. Fans have noticed and have spoken very loudly on social media over this issue. There is an immense amount of jealousy towards Clark, and it's truly unfortunate that media personnel are so quick to discredit her and hate on her because Clark is the driving force to the WNBA's skyrocketing exposure this season. It's pretty insane how Clark's transcendence of women's basketball has caused so much controversy by women. But what are your thoughts? Do you believe the flagrant fouls and cheap shots have gotten out of hand? Or is it all just a part of the game? Let us know in the comments below. And if you liked the video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel so you never miss an upload. We'll see you in the next one.